Bye.
Trump demands action.
Believe me, if you're the person, you know. I mean, you've already been told you're a target.
It is Monday, October 30th. Speculation swirling this morning as an indictment looms in the Russia investigation. The credibility of Robert Mueller's team now called into question over potential leaks as President Trump demands action.
Also, the royal family targeted. A disgusting new threat from ISIS aimed at 4-year-old Prince George. A very sick plot on the dark web just uncovered.
And anthem outrage boiling over as almost every member of the... Currently one of my favorite songs to listen to. Good morning to you. Rainy morning out there in New York City at 5 o'clock on the East Coast. You're watching Fox and Friends First. I'm Jillian Neely.
And I'm Rob Schmidt. It's going to be a nasty day. Good day to stay inside, watch the news. Thanks for starting your week with us. Right to our top story this morning. At this hour, speculation swirling as we await the first indictment in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe. It's an announcement that could be made today.
But top Republicans are already calling into question the whole investigation over alleged leaks by Mueller's team. Griff Jenkins is live in Washington, D.C. with what we can expect today. Good morning, Griff.
Jillian, Rob, good morning, and forgive the drilling in the background. That's not Mueller's team. That's just people working on our building. And there is intense speculation today that we could see individuals taken into custody as soon as this morning if these reported leaks in the investigation are true. The grand jury has approved these first charges. And look, we have no idea who might be charged or even what the charges are, although we have reported on some of the targets of Mueller's investigation, like Mike Flynn, the president's former national security advisor, or Paul Manafort, the campaign chairman. Whoever it is, Congressman Trey Gowdy, a former federal prosecutor himself, says he is frustrated this is leaked out.
We don't know who's being charged. We don't know who's being charged. We don't know what they're being charged for. The only conversation I've had with Robert Mueller, it was stressing to him the importance of cutting out the leaks with respect to serious investigations. Make no mistake, disclosing grand jury material is a violation of the law.
The ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, says he has not been informed of the charges and wouldn't comment if he knows whether or not the president is being investigated. And when pressed, here's what he had to say.
The idea that the president is not under investigation. Is that your conclusion?
I can't comment on that, George. I can't answer that one way or the other.
One way, you wouldn't know whether Robert Mueller is investigating the president?
I can't comment on that at all.
Meanwhile, President Trump unleashed on Twitter yesterday a series of 5 tweets in total pointing to the lack of investigation into links between Russia and Hillary Clinton and Democrats, saying at one point, quote, "There is so much guilt by Democrats Clinton, and now the facts are pouring out. Do something." Now, guys, we've got stakeouts all over town. We won't tell you where, but if something happens, we will indeed hopefully bring it to you as soon as it does. And just a quick note, the president pointing out on Twitter that this Russia talk was a distraction for his tax reform agenda. It may get in the way. Republicans are supposed to unveil that bill on Wednesday.
All right, Griff, thank you.
Okay.
All right, Griff, thank you. And with the speculation swirling in Washington about who will be charged, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, a former federal prosecutor, says if it's you, there's no doubt you don't already know.
The people who have been before the grand jury wouldn't know that there were charges. You go in there, you testify, you get out. And so I think what's really important to focus on here today is what we don't know. And what we don't know is who the person is. We don't know what the charges are. We don't know anything except there's a report that someone says there'll be charges on Monday and that there's a sealed indictment. And so once that happens, we'll have a lot more to react to. But the one thing that's clear here is, I heard someone say, are people nervous? Believe me, if you're the person, you know. I mean, you've already been told you're a target. Your lawyers have been, if you've been asked to come into the grand jury, they've got to advise you of your status as to whether you're a target. If you've been told you're a target, believe me, you're not sleeping well anyway.
All right, now to a Fox News alert. North Korea possibly making new preparations for war by simulating attack responses. State media in North Korea reporting that citizens are having rare blackout exercises and mass evacuation drills. Meanwhile, the U.S. flew a nuclear-capable B-2 stealth bomber over the Pacific this weekend in that region, just days ahead of the president's visit to Asia.
Congress wants to know more about how decisions are made before U.S. troops are sent into battle. Defense Secretary James Mattis and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson will testify today to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee over a war authorization bill put in place after 9/11 that allows military force against terrorist groups like ISIS. The deaths of 4 U.S. soldiers ambushed by terrorists in Niger, ramping up calls to reconsider the Broad War Authority and give Congress more control. Fox News has learned White House senior advisor Jared Kushner made an unannounced trip to Saudi Arabia last week. Kushner flying out on a commercial flight Wednesday, returning Saturday night. Now, we don't know who he met with, but the White House said he discussed the Trump administration's peace initiative. This is the 3rd time Kushner has visited Saudi Arabia this year.
All right, we are now learning how an escaped inmate got from West Virginia all the way to the Rio Grande, where he was caught trying to cross into Mexico. Police nabbing 43-year-old Todd Boys and a getaway driver who they say picked him up from jail. It took prison officials nearly 2 days to realize that Boys had escaped, and 4 officers have now been suspended in this, and we're going to see where that goes. Boys had been charged with attempted murder of a police officer after stealing a car.
2 sailors rescued after nearly 6 months lost at sea are back on dry ground this morning.
Yeah, U.S. Navy ship docking overnight at an American naval base in Japan. The women thanking the crew and calling on President Trump to honor their efforts.
Your commanding officer, Steve Wasson, and your XO, Patrick German, are 2 of the finest individuals that you have serving underneath you. You definitely need to accommodate them.
6 months lost at sea. It is incredible. The women say they want to recover their boat and still visit the island of Tahiti, their original destination, after leaving Hawaii in May. Maybe they should fly.
I was going to say, maybe go a different route or something.
A lot shorter than 6 months. All right. Well, it is the largest single-team protest in the NFL yet. All except 10 Houston Texans players kneeling or sitting during the national anthem.
Yeah, this show of force in response to owner Bob McNair comparing the players to, quote, inmates. Kelly Wright, live in Washington, D.C. Kelly, this is the first time anyone on the Texans has protested this season, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is the first time they've ever participated in this. They usually stand. Even after the furor over President Trump's comments about players, they've still remained standing. But Sunday, the Houston Texans and Seattle Seahawks played one of the greatest games, by the way, this season. But the actions of the Texans players before the game, well, that still has many people talking because it was so dramatic. For the first time this season, the Texans took a knee during the national anthem. All but 10 of the players were kneeling in protest of controversial comments made by team owner Bob McNair. And during a recent meeting with other NFL team owners discussing the NFL players' protests for racial and social issues during the national anthem, McNair said, "We can't have inmates running the prison." And after his comments were made public, he issued an apology to his team and the NFL players twice, stating that his comments were very regretful. And he went on to say, "I am truly sorry to the players for how this has impacted them and the perception that it has created of me, which could not be further from the truth." Even Jay-Z tackled McNair's comments, telling fans at his show in Anaheim, California, "Whatever you believe in, we come from one source, which means we are all brothers and sisters." Now, beyond the McNair issue, the NFL and players have canceled their meeting in Philadelphia today. Philadelphia Eagles safety Malcolm Jenkins, a spokesman for the players, claims the NFL wants to get back to football and move past the anthem demonstration. So we'll continue to follow the developments.
Yeah, they keep coming. That's right. Kelly, thanks for joining us this morning.
Sure.
The Los Angeles Dodgers and Houston Astros turning Game 5 of the World Series into a home run battle.
High fly, 3-2, high fly ball.
This was the game you wanted to be at. This was one. The Astros putting the game away in the 10th inning. Alex Bregman driving in the winning run for a 13-12 victory right there. Houston now leads the series 3-2. 2 former presidents in the house for the big win. You can guess which ones.
41 has the
President George H.W. Bush handing off the ball to his son, President George W. Bush, to throw out the first pitch. The series now heads to L.A. for Game 6 tomorrow night. Ooh, big Game 6.
Could go 7. I don't see L.A. losing Game 6. I think it's going to go 7. We shall see.
We shall see.
10 minutes after the hour, political smears and a partridge in a pear tree. The very damaging Christmas gift President Obama planned to give President Trump just revealed.
And as we just mentioned, anthem outrage boiling over as nearly every player on the Texans takes a knee. Former NFL player Burgess Owens has a message to the protesters: stand up and man up. He joins us live next.
And the swamp may not be fully drained just yet, but the White House is covered in bats, spiders, and cobwebs. The haunted makeover you're going to want to see. It's coming up. Stay tuned.
Ooh, good song.
Okay, welcome back. Well, a despicable alliance involving political activist groups here in the United States. A new book revealing left-wing radicals in the Oakland, California area worked with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. All-out war, the plot to destroy Trump, detailing a secret FBI investigation which found that terrorists were helping leaders of this group, an unnamed group in Oakland, acquire weapons in Germany, including bomb-making equipment and toxic chemicals. Can you believe this? One of the men even went to Syria, an American, to meet with ISIS for tactics training. Another bombshell discovery from that same book showing how Democrats such as former President Obama and Susan Rice tried to undermine President Trump around Christmas time of this year was the effort by attempting to unmask several names of Republican campaign officials who may have been communicating with Russian officials. This book, All Out War, hits the store shelves tomorrow. Jillian.
Anthem outrage boiling over as the Houston Texans stage the largest protest yet, with nearly every member on the team taking a knee or sitting for the anthem. The protest in response to team owner Bob McNair comparing the players to inmates. Here now to react is former NFL player and author of Liberalism or How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Weenies, and Wimps, Burgess Owens. Good morning, Burgess. Thanks for joining us. Just your initial reaction when you, first of all, heard Bob McNair's comments that came out last week, and then when you saw nearly all of the Texans kneeling.
Well, I think the first thing we have to realize is we're at a point where these young men, they've been chosen to represent their team. There's no position they can't play. There's no limitation of income they can't make. And for some reason, they're now calling their employer racist. What it comes down to is this. I remember growing up, something called inmates running an asylum, or the tail wagging a dog. At the end of the day, the translation is very simply this. Employees do not have a chance to have an opportunity to boss the boss. And these young men have to understand that. And what gets me is that they're so upset, so sensitive about issues like being called SOBs or whatever. And meanwhile, in the black community, what's happening to what our women are being called? What's happening to the disrespect of the racial stereotypes of black women, of young black men that are now they're looked at as thugs? We have an issue, and the issue is not what we're seeing in the NFL. The issue is what's going on behind the scenes where these young people have been trained and indoctrinated to really hate our country. And it's been done by the same people, the same left that is trying to make this a big issue now.
I think some people can understand how they would be upset. I think it's a poor choice of words on Bob McNair's part, to be honest with you, in referring to the players as inmates. But look, you're talking about guys now who have been fighting this battle for this is the second season. There was supposed to be a social concerns meeting between the players and the owners in Philadelphia today. That's been canceled. Malcolm Jenkins has been saying we want to move past this. How do you see them being able to move past it?
Well, I think the first thing, if they're concerned about the image of the NFL being inmates, let's do something about that. 20 guys every single year for the last 17 years are arrested for different things. There is an issue with thuggery within the NFL, and we have to understand where that comes from. At the same time, it is not up to white men to handle the black problem. We have wealthy young men now. Let's get together. Let's figure out what they can do in the community to make sure that 83% of those black men, the boys that are not working, are beginning to work. That's 70%. 75% of black boys right now in California are unable to pass reading and writing standards. What are black people doing about that? that. And maybe we should hold these black politicians accountable, because they're the ones that's protecting these guys and allowing this to happen to our race. So there's a lot to be done. It's being done by black people, though, and we need to make sure that we as black men stand up and man up, and let's make sure our community is being taken care of the way it should be.
Well, and I know you've noticed, and I've noticed too, I think that some of the players can learn a thing or two from a guy like Chris Long, who's now donating every paycheck, all 16 games this season, to educational equality.
I'm so glad you brought it up. Chris Long is a minority, by the way. He's a minority player. And if we really want to have things done with, how about if our black men on the sideline do the exact same thing? I think the last 5 games he's donating to inner city communities. If we did that, we pull our resources together and pull our thoughts and start mentoring our kids and stand up for the one thing that allows us to know that we have a better chance. The last thing we need to do is have as Marxists to teach our kids they don't have hope in this country, and that's exactly what's happening. So understand, young man, that people are looking at you. Kids are looking at you. They don't have fathers at home. They're looking at you. Stand up, man up, and let's tell them they can have hope and they get this thing done with by working hard and being a good, honest, good American.
Well, hopefully they're listening. Burgess Owens, thank you for joining us this morning.
Makes some very good points. All right, 19 minutes. Makes some very good points. All right, 19 minutes after the hour, a Fox News alert, a brand new plot just uncovered. ISIS targeting 4-year-old Prince George. Can you believe this? The terrifying message that the terror group is sending directly to the royal family.
And Roger Stone removed from Twitter after he dared to criticize CNN's Don Lemon. Carly Shimkus here live with the reaction to yet another conservative being silenced. Welcome back. Another conservative censored Roger Stone now taking to Twitter after his account was suspended.
Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7 and Sirius XM 115. Here with the reaction, he did say 1 or 2 pretty vile things to get that suspension.
So the question is, did he deserve that suspension? Republican strategist Roger Stone has been suspended from Twitter reportedly permanently after going on a profanity-laced tirade against several CNN anchors. On Friday, he attacked Don Lemon among several others, saying there are no credible fact checks that clear the Clintons on uranium. Even the people at CNN say you are a buffoon behind your back. He also said this to Don Lemon: you come across on TV as a dull-witted, arrogant party boy. You lie constantly, and no one who knows you thinks you're bright. He also sent out several other tweets using profane language. Roger Stone now telling Business Insider that he plans to sue, saying Twitter wants to avoid being regulated like a utility. No one has been willing to file the antitrust case. I am. Well, people are reacting to this story on Twitter, of all places. One person says liberal bias is rampant everywhere. Another Twitter user says, why can't there be a Twitter alternative for conservatives? And Kevin on Twitter says, libs always get a pass because, like Twitter, the mainstream media are all leftist owned and run. Still, Twitter does have a policy against harassment. So is this infringing on his free speech rights, or did he just break the rules?
Right.
That's the question.
All right, what's The Rock up to these days, Carly?
We talk a lot about the 2020 election, but it looks like he might actually be interested in running. These rumors started back in May when he said this. Take a listen.
Starting tonight, I am running for the President of the United States. In the past, I never would have considered running for president. I mean, I didn't think I was qualified at all, but now I'm actually worried that I'm too qualified.
Okay, well, over the weekend at LA Comic-Con, he said, I think the people's president has a really nice ring to that. I'll just say that it would be a great opportunity to help people. That actually sounds like he's serious. What? People, of course, chiming in on Twitter. One person says, that's my guy, longtime fan, but no, not for president.
We shall see.
We still got a whole lot of time.
At the end of the day, it's a popularity contest.
Like something like The Rock. What's The Rock got cooking up? Is that what it is? I don't know. You guys don't look like wrestling fans.
He could probably do a pretty good job at that. All right, let's go over to the White House, and they're getting ready for Halloween.
Yeah, they got ready. Check. This is the White House. Melania Trump tweeted this out from inside the White House. It shows spiders right here, cobwebs, covered in cobwebs. She tweeted this picture out saying the People's House, the White House, is ready to celebrate Halloween. So they're having a big event for kids, military kids, and people in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. So they're all ready to go.
Not enough people decorate for Halloween anymore.
I like that. I agree.
Carly, thanks.
Thanks, Charlie. All right, thanks a lot.
26 minutes after the hour, add President Obama to the list of Democrats now linked to the Russian dossier. His campaign shelled out nearly $1 million to the law firm that hired Fusion GPS, kind of a way to launder that money in. So does this threaten the credibility of the Russia collusion investigation? We're going to talk about that coming up.
And the worst costume idea ever. The father who sent a mall into panic mode with his Halloween costume. So can you tell what he's supposed to be? Good morning. A Fox News alert. A chilling and sick threat from ISIS targeting 4-year-old Prince George, hinting at a potential attack on his school. The extremists releasing a picture similar to this one of the young royal leaving his South London school with a message saying, quote, "Even the royal family will not be left alone." UK officials have not commented on the threat. Top secret security information on one of the world's busiest airports dumped on a street. The breach now under investigation. According to the Sunday Mirror, over 70 files were found on the USB, including the route the Queen takes to the Heathrow Airport and anti-terror airport security information. Airport officials obtaining it from an anonymous person who found it on a West London street. At this point, it's unclear if this was an intentional act. The Navy now trying to figure out if 2 U.S. Navy SEALs are responsible for the death of a Green Beret. Army Staff Sergeant Logan Melger, a veteran of 2 deployments to Afghanistan, was strangled. It happened in his barracks in June. He was stationed in Mali to help with secret counterterrorism training. According to the New York Times, the SEALs who are part of SEAL Team 6 have been put on administrative leave. He lost his ability to talk and walk after being shot in the head while searching for disgraced Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. Today, his wife will take the stand for him. Shannon Allen, wife of Master Sergeant Mark Allen, will testify during the final day of the sentencing hearing. Bergdahl pleaded guilty to desertion in Afghanistan in 2009. He was exchanged for 5 Gitmo detainees after 5 years in captivity. He could get life behind bars. Rob?
All right, add President Obama to the list of Democrats now linked to the Trump-Russia dossier. We just learned his campaign shelled out nearly $1 million to the law firm that secretly paid Fusion GPS in 2016. So, does this threaten the credibility of the Russia collusion investigation as it gets more interesting this week? Here now to debate, spokesperson for America First Policies, Katrina Pearson, and Democratic strategist Mustafa Tamiz. Guys, thanks so much. We got a lot to talk about, so let's try to keep the answers at least somewhat abbreviated. But Katrina, I'm going to start with you. Does this threaten the credibility? Does it kind of throw a shadow on it?
Well, not only does it threaten the credibility, Rob, this is unethical and potentially criminal. Here we're talking about the sitting president of the United States whose own campaign is using its resources to fund a defamatory smear campaign against a political opponent, and to take that further, potentially used it and then pushed it to the taxpayer-funded law agencies in order to prosecute said political opponent. There's only one thing that needs to be done here, and that is a probe needs to be opened to find out exactly what happened while President Obama was in office with regards to everything they did to the Trump campaign staff.
Mustafa, over to you. Democrats will just say this is a deflection, which we've heard a lot of, but it still stinks a little bit, doesn't it? You have to admit that.
Well, this is a manufactured controversy that was debunked years ago. We keep bringing it up because there are no good answers as to why so many members of the Trump campaign were meeting with Russians before, after, and during the campaign. And so they can't come up with those answers. This is just a way of deflection, just like you said.
Well, okay, but I mean, you don't think that there's something wrong with, using Russian sources to create a dossier against your opponent? I mean, what is the difference really between that and some of the things that the Republicans are accused of?
Opposition research is done in campaigns all the time. Both sides do it all the time. But at the end, the content of the dossier is not being questioned. What's being questioned is how it was funded. I just find that highly unusual that at a time that number of Trump officials met with Russians, number of Trump officials were paid by the Russians. That should be the question that we're asking, because at the end of the day, we know that Russia is our sworn enemy. And if they continue to do this
just because you keep saying something
It's a real problem.
Just because you keep saying the same thing doesn't make it true. I mean, we do know that Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and her entire campaign did collude with the Russians. But what's more important here, though, is the simple fact that there is some interesting connections, considering like Neil King, for example, who works for Fusion GPS. His wife reported directly to President Obama as his senior advisor at the exact same time. So we do need to know who funded these things, because the author of the dossier said that these are all uncorroborated anyway.
Real quick, Katrina, I mean, remember how crazy the Democrats went when they found out about the Donald Trump Jr. meeting? I mean, what is the difference? I mean, if it's just, I mean, they went crazy over that story. That was the whole big smoking gun that they were looking for. Now we have the same kind of conduct by the Democrats.
Well, no, this is a different kind of
That's not the same
Rob.
kind of conduct.
This is, it's absolutely
how is it not? Yeah. Mustafa, I want to get that from you. How is it? It's opposition research, right? Just like you just said.
No. That was a direct outreach from the Russian government saying that they had dirt on the opposition side, coming directly from the Russian government. That's highly unusual. A number of people were asked, would they ever take information coming from the Russian government? Everybody has said no, because that's a crime. So you're conflating a crime to something that House opposition research got paid. It makes no complete sense. It's a manufactured controversy to deflect it, and Katrina knows it, and I know it.
Okay, well, that's an opinion, and I can respect that.
Then the DNC and the Clinton campaign and everyone connected would not be lying about their role and having no idea that they're connected to this.
If it's clean,
you know that's not true, and you know this is a manufactured controversy.
Okay,
this is a manufactured controversy.
Let me get back into
over and over again.
Mustafa, real quick. Let me just ask you a couple questions. Let's just go back to clean slate here. Can you tell me why in the world the Russians would want to put $140 million into the Clinton Foundation? With all the foundations in the world, why would they donate that much money? Why would they pay Bill Clinton 3 times the speaking fee to go over there and talk to them and then meet with the president, with Vladimir Putin? Just answer that question. Give me a logical reason why that would ever happen.
I'll give you a very logical reason. I'll give you a very logical reason. First, that's been debunked a number of times.
You can't give me an
paying speaking fees for anybody. Look, you have. It's been debunked a number of times. We keep bringing stuff up that we know it's not true anymore. At some point, we're going to have to start getting out alternative facts and talk about reality.
It's not true. It's not true.
Because if something didn't happen, it can't be answered. Look, at the end of the day, the questions that have to be asked are: why is Donald Trump Jr. meeting with Russians? Why is Paul Manafort paid over $60 million by close allies?
And I agree with you. What I'm saying is it's both sides. I'm not debating that. I know the Russian investigation stinks. I know Manafort stinks. I get that.
There was not a single penny exchange from any bank in Russia to anyone on the Trump campaign.
Campaign manager.
All right, guys, he was
the campaign manager.
Cut this off.
And he was being paid by the Russians.
Thank you for a very beautiful little panel here this morning. Thank you so much. Happy Monday. All right.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Spirited.
Yes, that's what I was looking for.
Spirited. Yep. To extreme weather, though, now. Tropical Storm Philippe wreaking havoc on the Gulf, spinning up 2 tornadoes.
That's right. The storm packing winds up to 80 miles per hour, ripping apart roofs, blowing out windows, knocking out power at a mobile home park near Miami. Our meteorologist, Janice Dean, joins us now with a pretty big storm system all through the East Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of that moisture working its way into the Northeast, where we've got, yes, quite an impressive storm underway. Behind that, some snow across the Great Lakes, but this is the one that's going to cause a lot of travel delays across the Northeast today, from New York City up towards Portland. And the wind gusts, I mean, in some cases 30, 40, even 50 mile per hour winds because of this coastal low that continues to ramp up. Wind advisories are in effect for millions of folks along the Northeast coastline, so that's going to be an issue. Even if it's not raining, the winds are going to cause some significant delays. So forecast precipitation, we did see upwards of 4, 5, 6 inches of rain. The potential for more of that, especially across northern New England. Flood advisories are in effect for many folks across the Northeast and the interior Northeast. This is what's going to happen. This storm is going to move offshore, but then much colder air moves in. But the good news here is that for trick-or-treating tomorrow night, things look much better. A little cooler, but no storm systems, which is, good, right?
Take that.
Right? Speaking of Halloween, talking about Halloween. What are we talking about?
Okay, well, the results are in, guys. How about this one?
Okay.
We know what candy trick-or-treaters will be looking for the most tomorrow.
Ooh.
That's one of mine.
Reese's peanut butter cups.
That's a no-brainer. That's a really good one. The favorite Halloween candy right there, Reese's peanut butter cups, according to a new survey. Reese's and its relatives taking 4 of the top 10 spots, followed by Twix, Kit Kat, and Snickers.
But Julian, ours isn't in there. No, hold on. Reese's Pieces Milky Way. That's our favorite. Peanut butter M&Ms and Butterfinger rolling out the top 10.
The peanut butter is the winner here.
Peanut butter M&Ms are really good, by the way. Researchers even digging deep, finding out America's favorite candy ingredients, with, of course, chocolate coming in at number 1, followed by fruity flavors, caramel, nuts, and nougat.
What is nougat?
Nobody knows.
Not good.
We still haven't figured it out.
What about the least favorite? Study revealing Americans like Boston baked beans, Nick L. Nips wax bottles.
Yeah, what are those
and
things?
Plenty licorice the least.
Wait, what about the candy corn?
Yeah.
Where's that on the list? I don't know, right? It's that secret favorite.
We need to do some more investigating.
I'm a traditionalist. I just like to dump a whole thing of chocolate right over my face.
Now listen,
just
you know what
liquid
you have to
chocolate
do?
shower.
You have to go to Rob's Instagram because you have an excellent Halloween costume on Instagram.
4 years running, you know.
Are we dressing up tomorrow, more importantly?
I don't know. We'll see. It'll be a surprise.
We'll investigate that as well.
All right, Janice, thanks so much. All right, 40 minutes after the hour, George Washington's own church now moving to scrub any record of the first president from its history. Our next guest says our country's foundation is in danger. New York City Councilman Joe Borelli is here to talk about this.
And Starbucks' new Frappuccino getting so much buzz it could wake the dead. We're taste testing the new zombie Fraps. Still ahead. A historic Virginia church where George Washington worshipped has announced it will remove a plaque honoring our first president.
That's right. The church issuing this statement explaining the plaques in our sanctuary make some in our presence feel unsafe or unwelcome. Some visitors and guests who worship with us choose not to return. All right, the question is, where do we draw the line on this? We've seen this with the Confederate statues, and now we're moving on to the Founding Fathers. Here now to weigh in is New York City Councilman Joe Borelli. I mean, when you talk to people, we've seen the surveys. With Confederate monuments, there was a little bit more leeway, but when it came to the Founding Fathers and scrubbing them because they owned slaves, people were roundly against this. What do you think?
Well, this is sort of the slippery slope mentality that people were warning against when this first conversation about the Confederacy monuments came up. I wish I could get myself all worked up in anger over this, but the truth is, I mean, this is just sad. Is nothing sacrosanct about our national history when we have George Washington now potentially on the chopping block? I mean, the truth is there's a liberal minority in this country who applauds when we tear down our statues, who rolls their eyes at our national anthem, who disrespects our flag, and now they're just all too eager to see these memorials to someone who sacrificed so much to deliver our country to us, and they're just on the sidelines applauding it. It's appalling.
Well, and my question is, what are history books going to look like in 10, 20 years? What are we going to be teaching the kids of the future? Are we going to be erasing history?
Right. You know, there was a time when kids were just taught to accept George Washington as a hero, to accept people like Jefferson and Lincoln as great men. We used to sing patriotic songs in school. We used to wave flags at Veterans Day parade. These things are now seeming more like nostalgia than reality, and we have an angry minority on the left side of our country who is just too eager to see this happen.
And it's a very, very small minority. I mean, this, you cannot, blanket this over anybody on the left. I mean, this is a very far radical left-wing group that's really pushing all this, and I think everybody's scared of them and is scared of offending anybody, and that's how they get so much leverage.
Well, that's the interesting thing, is what happened to this church over the past few years. If you still go on the church's website this morning, they're advertising this connection to George Washington almost like a tourist trap. They wanted people to come and visit the church. They wanted to be this church to be a part of our national identity. What happened overnight that suddenly people are triggered by a memorial that simply says, in memorial of George Washington? This is not a menacing statue in any way. This is not a menacing threat to anyone in the congregation. And it was something that the congregation itself was so proud of for so long.
Right, and it's where he sat. It's the pew where he sat. That's where this memorial is. He sat there for a very long time, a number of years. So you're just, I don't even know if I say erasing, maybe editing history.
No, and if you look at the history of our country, obviously Washington stands, first among equals, essentially. But if you look at the history of even this church, this is someone who put his own money, put his own time and effort into building this church in 1773. And here, 240 odd years later, this church is just erasing the contributions that he made for the church. It's for them, but for us, it's our country.
You look back through history, people that lived hundreds of years ago and hold them to today's standards, you're going to find very few of them are going to make the grade. Are we just going to erase all that history around the world?
Look, if you want to find a city with perfect statues, I'd show you a city with no statues at all.
That's right. Okay, Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. It is 47 minutes after the hour. Time to check in with Steve Doocy to see what's coming up in Fox and Friends on this Monday. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Jillian. Hey, Rob. Good morning to you. We've got a big program today on Fox and Friends. The counselor to the President of the United States, Kellyanne Conway, is going to be joining us live from the White House. Alan Dershowitz, one of the world's greatest lawyers. We got lots to talk to him about. And Sarah Carter, investigative reporter from Circa News. We're going to ask her about this report that apparently President Obama's Obama for America, Organizing for America group, paid that firm, that law firm tied to the dossier, $1 million too. What's up with that? We got a busy 3 hours. Kicks off just 12 minutes and 10 seconds from right now, right here on the channel you trust for your morning news. Fox and Friends first, back in 2 minutes.